Welcome. My name is Matt Webster, the Supreme Chancellor of Beer. I'm the owner and president of Drink a Better Brew. We are a full-service beer educational business. And today we're going to talk about beer making. It's a little brewing 101. And typically when you get to a brewery outside, when you pull up, you see giant silos out there. Those are all filled with grain. And grain is really the main ingredient that's going to go into making your beer. What you're going to do with that grain is you're going to pump it into a mash tun. And first and foremost, you're going to basically split the grain open. And inside is a starch, which is going to create an enzymatic reaction and release sugars. Into the mash tun that goes, split in half, and what this does is creates an oatmeal-like substance, and the water that comes through creates an enzymatic reaction, releasing the sugars from the enzyme. Now in that process, you're then going to switch over to what's called a lauter tun, and a lauter in German means to filter. So it's basically like when you're making pasta, you're putting it in a strainer, you're basically taking the water that's left over, straining it through, and all the spent grain, which is now that saturated barley, is going to stay on top. The sweet wort sifts through, that holds all the fermentable sugars, which is really your first remnants of beer. Now what a lot of small breweries do is they take the spent grain and they eject it outside into a truck and they send it locally to a farmer, and the farmer typically uses it for feed for their cattle or for their animals. When I worked for a brewery, we actually used the spent grain to send to cattle, and then we used the cattle in hamburgers at the pub. So it was the 101, absolutely, it was fantastic. So that's the whole element. In the lauter tun, you're going to be in there probably about 2 to 3 hours in that process, and then you're going to take that sweet wort and transfer it over to a kettle. And in the kettle, you're going to induce a high temperature, and you're also going to add additions of hops and different elements of a brewing process. And then the fourth element, which a lot of bigger breweries use, is called the whirlpool. And what the whirlpool does is a fourth element where you transfer the sweet wort into a whirlpool, and through centrifugal force, all the extra proteins and anything that's left over clarifies the beer, and that gets actually left into the center of it. It's called trub. You're next sending it through a heat exchanger into fermentation. And traditionally there's two styles of beer, ales and lagers. Lagers are bottom fermenting. Ales are top fermenting, and they're basically characterized by the storage temperature, ales being stored at a warmer temperature, lagers being stored at a colder temperature. And in fermentation, ales typically are in there for anywhere from 7 to 14 days. Lagers are a little bit shorter. And then you're really, after that, you're sending it into a bright tank. The reason it's called a bright tank, it's a compound noun. It's a tank filled with bright beer, adding carbonation, and then it goes to the bottling line. After that, you're bottling on carbonation, packaging it up, and shipping it out. And that's really beer 101. It's the brewing process. So any questions, you can go to my website. Should I do that? Tell your website. Tell my website? Okay. www.drinkabetterbrew.com, or you can reach me on my cell phone. I'm not giving that out. Just kidding. And that's pretty much it. So how am I closing this thing out? Smile. Big smile. I am Matt Webster, the Supreme Chancellor of Beer, and this Drink a Better Brew. Thank you very much for your time and patience.